You aren't addicted to your phone, but you can stop using it 24/7. Joey Odom has some resources for you coming up on episode 139 of Manly with Andy. Joey will talk about the cool device that you've got to help families and just everybody stay away from their phone a little bit more, which is good. But I like to start every conversation with the question, what do you think is the biggest challenge that men face today, and how do we overcome it?
I mean, this is the premise for me, of this discussion. This is the premise of really where God has taken my life and career, and I would distill it down. We're going to talk a lot about phones here, but I'll distill it down into the biggest obstacle, I believe, is just distraction. And I'll define distraction as anything that gets in the way of your intentions. We all have great intentions, especially as guys. We intend to do a lot of things. And a distraction is just simply anything that gets in the way of that. I know that's not like a groundbreaking definition. And I believe that this idea on how we remove this is one of the biggest questions of our day. And I think what we're going to talk about today is let's put in place the greatest possible distraction, which I believe is our phone. So we can get into all the reasons I believe why, and we'll give some practicals. So I hope to actually unfold that answer throughout our conversation here, but I believe distraction is the thing that's going to get in the way of all the wonderful things we want in our lives.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd agree with this, but I've heard recently that, it used to be, money was the currency of our time, and then it turned into time, and now I've heard that attention is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The attention economy. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's where we direct our eyes, and it's regardless, Andy, this is regardless of how great we think we are inside and how called we feel to something. I believe, and this is kind of a Screw Tape Letters concept, it may not be these big capital S sins that derail us. It could just be just this diversion of our eyes from the things that are most important to us. And I'm not talking nefarious things. I'm talking about, hey, I want to hang out with my daughter and spend time with her. She's in volleyball tryouts right now, so she wanted to go out and practice volleyball yesterday. And all it takes in that moment, is just a couple glances at my phone before she would kind of walk sullen back to the house, thinking like Dad's not present with me. So that's it. And I want to have a great relationship with my daughter. I want her to know how valuable she is. I want her to grow up expecting things from a man, right? I want her expecting attention from a man, for her to know that, hey, I deserve this. And I believe we're subconsciously, or maybe consciously, we're communicating to our children or to our spouses, hey, this thing, I may say I love you, but this thing in my pocket, this thing I hold in my hands, this screen, this actually is what gets my eyes. This actually gets my attention. And that's what bestows value, is attention. So I couldn't agree more. The economy we're in is an attention economy, and it is valuable. That attention is so, so valuable. And and this is great news, Andy. Everybody's heard talks on tech. This, I believe, is the greatest opportunity we have. What an amazing opportunity we have. So everybody talks negatively about this. No. This is an unbelievably huge and wonderful opportunity all of us have to get this right, and I promise you we can get it right.
I feel and hear your passion on this, but talk about what was the origin story of you, if it was a research thing or just in your own personal life of, I realized I had to make a change and I could be the change.
Yeah. It's a very specific moment. It's the fall of 2013. My son Harrison, who is 17 years old at the time, he was 5 years old, and he was playing his very first soccer season. So to just a little background of Harrison to help understand the story. So Harrison is a very sweet kid. Harrison is a kind kid at that time. He's very gentle. He's just a sweet boy, right? And if you've seen youth soccer, 5-year-old soccer, you know that that's not really the kid who scores the goals, is the sweet kid, right? Usually the ones who score the goals appear to be involved in maybe like some kind of work release program or live in a halfway house. You know what I mean? The aggressive kids. Yeah. So needless to say, everybody this season had scored a goal on the team except for Harrison. But we went out, for another soccer game, sat on the sidelines, my wife and I and our daughter, and in the middle of the game, just really in the middle of the ordinary, something extraordinary emerged when Harrison reared back his little leg and he kicked, and the ball glided over the grass into the back of the net for Harrison's first soccer goal. And everybody went crazy. So, I mean, the sweet parents, they knew that Harrison had not scored a goal and this was his first goal. His coach ran out on the field, picked him up, So there's this amazing magical moment. And then Harrison did something in between this little moment, in between the ball hitting the back of the net and his coach picking him up. Harrison did what 5-year-old boys do, is he turned to the sidelines to lock eyes with Dad, to see the smile on my face, see the pride on my face. And it really, truly, and it was a magical moment, except for one small detail, and that's that I missed the entire thing. I missed the entire moment I just described, because when Harrison looked at me, all he saw was the top of my head as I was looking down at my phone. And it was at that moment, I didn't really have the words for it. I have the words for it now. The words for it now is that my relationship with my phone, we had gotten in the way of one of my most important relationships. But at the time, the only words I had was, ugh, right? That something's wrong. I didn't realize that, all the science of relationships and stuff we can talk about. I didn't realize that. I just knew that it didn't feel right. And as we went along this journey, we talked to a lot of other dads, we talked to a lot of other moms, we talked to a lot of other kids, and they all kind of said the same thing. It just doesn't feel good. Just something's wrong. And so we walk around almost with this feeling inside that this is inevitable, that there's nothing we can do about this. And we felt this sense of desperation very much from people, and just said, oh, what are we going to do? Kids and their phones, or I have to have my phone for work. So we walk around resigned. And so then I got a text from one of my good friends, Heath Wilson, who's a co-founder of mine in this business. And he just said, hey, let's talk about this. What if we could help other dads? What if we could help other families? What if we could do something about it? And he didn't know my personal experience, that I had fallen on my face again and again and again. So I was either the most unqualified person or the most qualified person he could possibly text about this, because I felt this so deeply. And so it was really at that moment we said, hey, let's do something about this. And as we've gotten into the research and we've gotten into the science of it, we've found a few different interesting things that we can go into. One of them is we've formed a relationship with a device, which is weird. We can talk about why. And the other part of it is that I think that we're attacking this problem as if it's an addiction versus a habit, which is a really interesting distinction. There are absolutely addictive characteristics to our phones and the apps on our phones and things it does to us, but most of us are not clinically addicted. And here's why that's important, is because when we say, I'm so addicted to my phone, we often will kind of laugh it off. We'll say, oh, I'm so addicted to my phone. As if we would do that with a heroin addiction. We just kind of giggle about it, right? We wouldn't do that with a very serious addiction, but we do that in a way to give ourselves a pass. But what if instead we started thinking about this, and this goes back to the very first question, this distraction. What if we went back to this, instead of saying I'm addicted, first step in a 12-step program is you're powerless. So what if instead we said this is a habit? Well, with a habit, I feel like I can do something about a habit. I think I can do something about that. So when we look at this, let's look at this using the science of habit formation. James Clear talks about this a bunch in Atomic Habits. Let's approach this as a habit. And then we'll start to take a little bit of ground every day, and we won't all of a sudden feel so powerless over it. So it was kind of all of that. That's kind of a longer origin story and kind of skipping pieces here and there. But that's how we went about it. Was we felt this. We had missed our kids' soccer goals. We felt like we were powerless. But as we looked deeper into it, we realized the solution was actually a lot closer than we thought it might have been.
You talked about a little bit about the science behind it, and just talk more about how we are, I was going to say, addicted to our phones.
Yes.
How we have a hard time pulling away. And I've heard this before, that the phone companies and phone manufacturers, they make phones very bright and colorful for a reason. Have you found that to be part of the case, of just part of the reason why we can't stop looking at them?
Absolutely. I mean, the main reason why, Andy, is because, and let's be honest here, and hear what I'm saying here. Our phones are a lot more interesting than our kid telling us about the dream they had last night. That's a lot more interesting. They're a lot more interesting. They're a lot more entertaining than our wives telling us about her being between 3 different pictures for the master bedroom. These things are kind of boring. So we live in a little bit of the mundane, but if you can make an equal comparison, gosh, ice cream tastes so much better than grilled chicken and broccoli. But we know what fills us. We know what feeds us. We know what makes us healthy. We know what helps us get to, from a health perspective, into the life that we want, to longevity and health and fitness. So Of course, our phones are a lot more alluring than the things in our lives, without a doubt. But both things can be true. They can be a lot more interesting, and they can also not be the path that we want to take to get us to the things that we want in our lives. So there's no doubt about it. And I don't know when Steve Jobs made the iPhone, you read stories about this, I don't know that he really envisioned the path that it would go down. I don't know if a lot of these engineers at Facebook and Instagram, when they were originally concepting the like button, for example, I don't think they really knew that this would get into the drawing attention away from more important things. So I don't know that it's very easy to paint. It's very easy to demonize the tech companies, the tech founders, and maybe that's justified in many cases. However, I don't know. I think it's important to know that they do want your eyes on those things, but I don't know that it's necessarily as relevant when I think about, okay, well, what do I want for my life? Okay, yes, there could be some bad actors here. They may be designing something that wants our constant attention. I believe that probably is true, but I think when you get into that discussion, you start to get into a little bit of victimization versus proactivity and saying, that all may be true, but how does this apply to me? What do I do today? How do I have a fruitful marriage? How do I be the best dad that I can possibly be? How can I have the most focused, quiet time every morning that I could possibly have? And I think that's where it just gets to, let's just start focusing more on pragmatism and proactivity on what we can be doing every single day.
I know we'll talk about the cool technology that you have with your company, Reclaimwell, in a little bit here, but I just think you talked about this a little bit where, we make excuses well, I need to have my cell phone with me for work. Talk a little bit about how we overcome objections, maybe even that we're giving ourselves, like, I need to have this because I need to be checking email all the time or whatever. How did you handle that in your life to realize I can put the phone down? I don't need it 24/7.
For now, I think for us, we have to recognize this is difficult. It's going to take some time. I began to look at this, and this is the way that we look at this. And there are a lot of people who are doing some great things when it comes to this to help us regain our attention. For us, we look at this with a very, very simple premise, and I alluded to it earlier, is that we have developed a relationship with our device. And I believe looking through that filter is really, really helpful for us to come to the solution. So when you think about a relationship, we have formed a relationship, and this is so unique to us, with an object, and that's so bizarre. Every other relationship that we have as adults is usually with a living thing, with an embodied thing, but we've formed a relationship with an object, and we say our relationship with my phone, my relationship with technology, and it's reverted us back into this childlike state of relationship with an object, similar to how an infant has a relationship with a pacifier or a teddy bear or a blankie. And there is a term for this, and they're called transitional objects, called comfort objects. And children cling to these objects in the absence of relationships, in the absence of their parents, and it gives them a sense of security. So for the first time since childhood, we have formed a relationship with an object, but it's a little bit different. So we cling to this phone, we cling to this object in the presence of relationships. We're clinging to this when our kids are trying to talk to us. We have the audacity to pull it out of our pockets and start looking at it. When our spouses are opening up to us at the dinner table, we're looking at our phones. Hold on, there's something wrong with this. So it's not transitioning us like it does for children. This is devolving. This is pushing us backwards. This is reverting us back to a childlike state of relationship with an object. So when you recognize that, I think it's important. And we formed a relationship with an object in the same way that we form relationships with humans. Begins with proximity, which leads to interaction, which results in dependence. So proximity leads to interaction, leads to dependence. So proximity. Our phones are with us statistically 91% of the time. 91% of us have our phones with us 24 hours per day. So I'll restate that. 91% of us have our phones with us 24 hours per day. We don't have to move our feet to reach our phones. And it's because they're with us that we interact with them. So when you think about interaction, this is a fascinating stat, is that we think about all the times that we use our phones and we think, well, notifications came in or an email came in. Well, hold on one second. Data tells us that 89% of our smartphone usage is self-initiated. It's us. It's me checking, we're a big tennis family in our family. It's me checking Wimbledon scores when my daughter's trying to talk to me, right? So we're initiating this interaction, and that's only because our phones are with us. That results in a dependence on our phone, which makes us think that I need to have my phone with me more. We call this the PID loop. Proximity leads to interaction, leads to dependence, which results in more proximity, more interaction, more dependence. But this all begins with proximity. If you can break that, I said 91% of us have our phones with us 24 hours a day. If you join the 9% club, 9% of people who have some period of time apart from their phones a day, you begin to lessen your interaction just a little bit. And when you begin to lessen your interaction, you realize maybe I'm a little bit less dependent on it. It makes me realize, when I go on a walk with my wife at night around the neighborhood, maybe I don't need my phone with me. And all of a sudden that opens up a world of conversation. That changes everything. Or if you think, well, what if our kids are with the babysitter on a date night? Well, how about this? What if you and your wife swap phones at the dinner table? I'm not going to doom scroll my wife's phone. She's not going to doom scroll my phone, but we're going to have it available for the necessity of the phone if we need it. So it begins with all of this intention around it, but it always begins, Andy, I really firmly believe this, it always begins with breaking proximity for little bits of time per day, which lessens interaction, which lessens dependence, which will make us realize we don't need it with us all the time.
Wow, so much there. So talk a little bit more about what you and your organization, your company has come up with to help eliminate that or reduce it.
We believe firmly that this is a major opportunity. We, being my business partner and I, we met at church and we met in a men's small group. So we believe this is actually an amazing opportunity for believers. This is a major opportunity for the church. And I think if the church can get this right, what will happen is our people will be discipled well. And then when we disciple well, good discipleship always leads to evangelism. So what's going to happen is a church gets this right, beginning with the church staff. A church gets this right. And then people begin to feel the difference. They begin to say, oh, I may not necessarily agree with the risen Savior yet, but gosh, I love how that church is raising families and teaching families, and I love how focused they are when they're with me. So we believe this is an opportunity for the church. We are here for families, whether you believe in a risen Savior or not, but we specifically believe at Reclaimwell, we want to help church staffs specifically. So this is not a commercial. This is not for everybody. This is not a commercial at all for what we do. Just we believe if somebody is on a church staff, this organizationally can begin really, really great, starting with the staff saying, hey, we're all going to get on this app and this platform that measures the amount of time that we're away from our phones, that uses things like gamification to see a friendly leaderboard on who has the most time away from their phone, for you to see when people in your circle are spending some time away from their phone, to encourage you to do that, to involve your families with it. So we have an app that measures that amount of time that you're away from your phone and then gamifies that. And then you can tag how you've used your life. So I could tell you, Andy, based on using my app usage within Reclaimwell, I can tell you exactly how much time I've had in quiet times this year. Because when I spend my 20 minutes in quiet time, I tap the app, I flip my phone, I get it away from me. And then when I'm done, I break that session and I tap what I did. I tap quiet time. So you begin to see, this is a term I heard from an author named Hannah Brencher, which I love. You're collecting evidence on how well you're doing. I love that term, collecting evidence. So I'm collecting evidence on the fact that says, on a daily basis, I get in the Word. On a daily basis, I spend time with my family. On a daily basis, I spend time in prayer. Whatever those things are that are important to you, back to intentions, removing the distraction during a time of intention. So that's how we do it. That's Reclaimwell. It's built specifically for church staffs and church leaders. We have another tech company specifically for families called Aro. That's goaro.com, where people can actually go buy a box that holds and charges your phone, that connects with the app that measures the amount of time that you're away from your phone. And so it's both. So we are here for families through Aro. We're here for church staffs and church leaders through Reclaimwell. One other cool thing with Reclaimwell for church leaders and church is that you can deploy this within a burst, like a 21-day church-wide challenge, for example, that everybody in your church can get access to this. But we believe it has to start with the leadership of the church first. And we have some amazing stories coming from churches all across the country, large churches, small churches, that have brought this in. This is a line from Samer Masad, who's a pastor at one of the North Point campuses in Atlanta. Samer says this is the most important thing that he's ever done for his staff. And think about that. And there's nothing motivational about putting down your phone. It's because that's opening up family time for his staff. So he's seeing the fruit within his staff, and the fruit is saying, hey, we're becoming more whole people. Hey, we are getting time physically distant from the greatest distraction in our lives, and we're able to enjoy family time, which is so important to them on their staff. And then others have, hey, I want my church to be more involved, my staff to have great focused quiet times, or whatever that is, or prayer time. And that's every church, which is cool. Every church has their own one thing that says, hey, if it were just one thing that I want people to do apart from their phones, this is the thing. So we're hearing those stories, and it's cool to see churches leading well, then deploying it to their people so they can get it, they can experience that as well. Again, not to be away from our phones. Who cares about being away from your phone? But to do something greater on the other side of being apart from your phone.
All right, one more question for you, Joey.
Yeah.
If someone is listening right now and they think, okay, they're convicted like I am, and they're like, and they think, I want to do something right now that can just be like 1%, like you were saying. It doesn't have to be night and day. We're not throwing the phone away.
Yes. Yeah.
But what can I do right now to start making a change?
It's just like anything that's valuable. It's going to start very unsexy. It's going to start this is going to be the least, revolutionary thing I tell you. And that is, today, spend 5 minutes physically distant from your phone. Get it physically distant from you, and start with something. Instead of putting down your phone then wondering, what am I going to do next? Instead, begin with something. If it's dinner time, so easy. Dinner time. What I want you to do, just go find a drawer and put your phone in it. This doesn't require you to subscribe to an app. You don't need a box for this. All what I'm describing, again, I think all of the tools that we built help you level up and help it become sustainable. But just start with 5 minutes. And then tomorrow, 10 minutes. And then the next day, 15 minutes. And I want you to have a goal in mind that you spend 2 hours per day physically distant from your phone. And I don't necessarily mean consecutively. That can be broken up into 10 different times throughout the day, aggregating across 2 hours. And here's why I say 2 hours. When you spend 2 hours physically distant from your phone every day, then you will reclaim 1 month per year. So you will experience a 13-month year by spending 2 hours physically distant from your phone, but it has to start small. A lot of fellas listen to your show, and we're going to want to go all out. And that's great if you can do that, but this has to be sustainable. And what's going to happen is really, really cool. And this is what happened with my daughter. May 8th, 2020, she and I watched a movie together. She was 10 years old at the time, and we watched a movie together. And at the end of the movie, she told me something. She said, and this was not congratulating me. This was not judging me. She just said, Dad, did you know that's the first time we've ever watched a movie and you haven't had your phone? Which in a way, Andy, was a gut punch. It was like, had I really messed this up so badly for 10 years? But what was cool is that she had noticed. She noticed the difference when I didn't have my, the very first time, she noticed that difference. So fast forward to May 8th, 2024. By the way, I wrote this in my journal. This is how I know these dates. May 8th, 2024, I read this in my 5-year journal 4 years later. And I said to Gianna, do you remember that night we watched that movie and you told me that was the first time we'd ever watched a movie and I hadn't had my phone? And she laughed and she said, oh, I remember. She goes, Dad, it would be so weird if you had your phone during a movie now. So Andy, think about that. That's 4 years. That was 10 years of mistakes on my part. And then it was 4 years of commitment of 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time, of finding a moment like a movie that says, maybe I don't need my phone right now. Having a bunch of family dinners where say, I'm going to keep my phone over here for now. And people around you will notice when those things happen. And normal now for Gianna, 4 years later, normal now for her is when we spend time together, I'm locked in on her. So let's think about the implications of that. Let's think about what's normal for her now in relationships, because she knows what happens. Someday when she goes on a date, someday many years from now when she goes on a date, if a guy sits there on his phone, she knows exactly what to do. You order the surf and turf. You get the filet and the lobster, right? You let him pay, and you never go out with him again. This is what you do. And so, but what happens? Our friend Andy Crouch says this, and I love this. Andy says that it takes he says multi-generational change. Real change happens over 3 generations. So what I believe for the listener, someone listening right now, and it's going to sound 5 minutes sounds so small, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but I'm just telling you. You doing that today, tomorrow, the next day, the next week, next year, you doing that is going to have reverberating impact in your grandchildren. That small decision today, and it's so worth it. It's so small, but it's so worth it because it opens up a world of possibility. So the person who's listening saying, I was doing well at this, now I fell off. Or the person saying, gosh, this sounds really, really hard. Absolutely. But you can do 5 minutes. And I promise you, your grandchildren are going to feel it.
Heads up, Satan has new schemes, and you can defeat them. John Veal's got some help for you coming up next week on Manly with Andy.